America's biggest tragedy was the Jim Crow laws, and this changed many lives drastically. This was a brutal and miserable time for African Americans that had just previously faced slavery. These were civil laws that separated African Americans and whites from slight bit of contact called segregation. Even after slavery, many people thought that African Americans are inhuman and the same level as animals. The Jim Crow laws changed every aspect of daily life for many people. African Americans and whites couldn't eat in the same room, share textbooks, sit in the same rail car, and even drink from the same water fountains. If people failed to follow the laws, they were arrested and most likely beat. White people had better overall lives than African Americans. They could have gotten away from crimes and take seats that belonged to them on the bus. Jim Crow laws came to be about after the end of the Reconstruction in 1877 to 1974. The origin of the name Jim Crow first appeared in a minstrel routine by author Thomas Dartmouth Rice. Minstrels are non-African American performers who play stereotypical roles of African Americans during an entertainment. Soon the name Jim Crow became a derogatory name for African Americans. Jim represented the common name at the time, and Crow is associated to African Americans due to them being the same color. Most of the southern states seemed to legalize and pass the Jim Crow laws first. Ironically, these states previously seceded from the United States during the Civil War, so they feel strongly for slavery. These states include Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Oklahoma, South Carolina, North Carolina, and many more. Soon the West states began taking this practice. This includes California, New Mexico, and Nevada. There were many very dedicated people that wanted to get equal rights for African Americans. These people put their lives in danger as a result. This includes a very smart and respectful woman named Mary Church Terrell. She is known for being the first African American woman to earn a college degree. This inspired many African Americans because it showed that they really can have a nice life if they were dedicated enough. Mary Church Terrell also is a founding member of the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and a civil rights activist. Another person that is equally as important is Thurgood Marshall. This person was also a civil rights leader and a council member of the NAACP. He successfully won the Brown v. Board of Education case with several other attorneys that stopped segregation in schools. Homer Plessy was an average man that made shoes for a living, but he became one of the most influential civil rights activists. He was put on trial due to him sitting on the all-white rail car when he was 7/8 white and 1/8 African American, but he refused to move. This case came to be called the Plessy v. Ferguson. He challenged the separate car law. As a result, he inspired future generations of civil rights movement. The most famous defendant of the case is John H. Ferguson. He was the judge of the Criminal Court of New Orleans. These were a few people during the Jim Crow era, but there are many more. This includes the heroic Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. One essential victory that was in favor for African Americans was the Brown v. Board of Education case. This case lasted from December 17, 1952 to May 17, 1954, and it was ruled by the Supreme Court of the United States. Like I said on the previous slide, Thurgood Marshall and other members of the NAACP challenged the law of segregated schools. They argued that it violated the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause because the African American schools weren't the same as white schools. Several years later, the court ordered all schools to combine to become equal. Another important event is the Plessy v. Ferguson case. This case began when Homer Plessy sat on an all-white rail car when he was 7/8 white and 1/8 African American. He then refused to leave, which resulted of him getting arrested. Plessy violated the Separate Car Act in Louisiana 1892. The ruling court was once again the Supreme Court of the United States. Plessy's attorney stated that his rights under the 13th and 14th Amendment was taken away, and the infamous Judge John Ferguson claimed that Louisiana has the right to do this under the state boundary. Unfortunately, Plessy lost the case, and racial segregation continued throughout the state. Therefore, the doctrine of separate but equal was accepted. Beginning in the mid-1950s, many people began to look at the laws and began challenging them. For example, the Montgomery bus boycott and the march from Selma to Montgomery. Case after case, people kept asking for the civil rights of a human being. After all the many hardships and unjustified lives the African Americans faced, In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed. This immediately ended the Jim Crow era.